Alright guys, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa la udwana illa ala al-zalimin, wa la aqibatu lil muttaqeen. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala abdika wa rasulika Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. So inshallah ta'ala, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And you know, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He takes away one from this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives another. And it's beautiful that we see this succession here with the Imams. But the different personalities, subhanAllah, you know, each one of these Imams has such a dramatically different personality, and we learn to love them all. Imam Malik rahimahullah is very different from Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah in his personality, in his views, in his approaches to society, to politics, to everything. He's very different from Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, but is beautiful in his own way. His story is different. His city is different. I mean, he's in Medina, and we talked about Medina and what Medina was like, how the ulama of Medina of that time, particularly they were the children of the Sahaba, they were, you know, the leftover tabi'een, if you will. Medina was the center of hadith study and of knowledge, and it remained that way. It was also the most politically stable place as well. So Medina was very politically stable at that time. You didn't have what you had in the other places, you know, for the most part. Obviously there were some flare-ups, but Medina is a place where the Prophet ﷺ said that there would come people and they would say, go to this place. And the Prophet ﷺ said, وَالْمَدِينَةُ خَيْرٌ لَهُمْ. And Medina is better for them. And they would come and they would say, go to this place. And the Prophet ﷺ says, but Medina is better for them. And Rasulullah ﷺ, he says, and this is a hadith, we mentioned there's a hadith with Salman radiallahu ta'ala anhu and the Persians, that the scholars interpreted to mean Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. There's also a hadith which is narrated in Musnad al-Imam Ahmad, where the Prophet ﷺ says, يَضْرِبَ النَّاسُ أكاد الإبل يطلبون العلم. I'm reading it slow for those of you that are trying to write it down. فلا يجدون أحدا أعلم من عالم المدينة. So again, يضرب الناس أكاد الإبل يطلبون العلم فلا يجدون أحدا أعلم من عالم المدينة. The Prophet ﷺ said there will come a time where people will strike the thighs of their camel, they'll strike the backs of their camel, traveling the world to seek knowledge. Meaning what? People are going to be going to Syria, people are going to be going to Iraq, people are going to be going to Palestine, people are going to be going everywhere to seek knowledge. And he said, and they will not find anyone more knowledgeable than the scholar of Medina. And Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, by almost consensus of the scholars, is the scholar that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about, because no one really had that title in history except for Imam Malik rahimahullah. To the extent, you know, there's no one that was by consensus at any point in time the most knowledgeable man in Medina other than Imam Malik. You always had this huge group of great scholars, but Imam Malik achieves the position where no one gives fatwa in Medina, and he's called the Imam of Dar al-Hijrah, the Imam of Medina, and it's just understood. So the Prophet ﷺ was saying that people are going to be going all over the world, but the Imam of Medina is the most knowledgeable of them. And this is narrated by Dhahabi, it's narrated by Sufyan ibn Uyayna, it's narrated by Ibn Jurayj. So many different scholars said that this is referring to an Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. He was born the year 93 after Hijrah. 93 after Hijrah, which is the same year that Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu passed away. So he's in Medina, and it's only been 79 years since the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Think about how close he is to the Prophet ﷺ. It's only been 79 years since Rasulullah ﷺ died in Medina, and he's born into that, rahimahullah ta'ala. His name is Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik, and then it's not Anas ibn Malik, the famous Sahabi, but instead it's Abi Amir al-Asbahi al-Yamani. Okay? So Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik ibn Abi Amir al-Asbahi al-Yamani. Okay? His mother's name is Aliya bint Sharik. Aliya bint Sharik. His father's name, obviously, Anas ibn Malik ibn Abi Amir. Now, with Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, Al-Asbah is a tribe from Yemen. So he is Yemeni. Both of his parents are actually Yemeni. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala is, from that lineage, and the Prophet ﷺ loved the people of Yemen. Rasulullah ﷺ, there are multiple ahadith where the Prophet ﷺ praised the people of Yemen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them. And subhanAllah, anyone that's ever really interacted with Yemeni ulama, and things of that sort, and been to Yemen and dealt with the people and things of that sort, there's a very special quality of the people of Yemen, throughout history actually, as far as their, the love for the religion is concerned. SubhanAllah, this is amazing because you find it here in Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala in his family as well. So he's Yemeni from both sides of his family. Now his grandfather, his closeness to the Prophet ﷺ actually starts with his grandfather. The grandfather's name was again Malik ibn Abi Amir. Malik ibn Abi Amir, he moved to Medina during the Khilafah of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. There's a very famous incident that took place with Uwais al-Qarni. Uwais al-Qarni from Yemen, when he came during the reign of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. A large group of people came from Yemen during the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So he came and he moved to Medina actually. He settled in Medina and he became a student of the Sahaba. So Imam Malik's grandfather was a student of Aisha, was a student of Umar, was a student of Uthman, was a student of Ali, was a student of Talha ibn Ubaidillah. So subhanAllah, he studied with the Khulafa basically that were after him, as well as Talha ibn Ubaidillah. And it's not like he came and he was just some student that got lost in the gathering. He was one of the people that when Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu commanded the writing of the Mus'haf, that was appointed to that committee. So Imam Malik's grandfather was involved in the writing of the Quran, the writing of the Mus'haf. Not only that, but what's even a deeper and more intimate piece of history, when Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu ta'ala anhu was assassinated, and the people that killed him didn't allow his janazah to be public, and Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu took Al-Hasan wal-Hussein and a small group of people, and they buried, they washed him and prayed janazah on him and buried him privately. He was also one of those people that went with Ali to bury Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So he holds a very high position with the Sahaba. He's one of those who fought in the conquest of Africa. So he went, he went to North Africa in the time of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He was a man that was brave on the battlefield. And then when he came back and settled, he served as an advisor, and one of the closest advisors in fact, to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah ta'ala. So his grandfather is a very special man, holds a very special place in history. And he had, he had a few children that were also scholars. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, his father was a scholar. His father was someone that learned hadith and that was a scholar, and we'll see that in his story. His uncles and his aunts were scholars. One of the most famous ones, he had an uncle by the name of Abu Suhail. And Abu Suhail, now this is, again, now from a connection perspective. Abu Suhail, his uncle, is not only a scholar of hadith, but he's one of the teachers of one of the greatest hadith scholars of all time, Al-Imam Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. Al-Imam al-Zuhri. So Imam Malik's uncle is a teacher of Imam al-Zuhri, who is the first man to be given an official dictate by the government to go and collect a hadith. So his uncle is actually a teacher of Imam al-Zuhri, rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Malik's brother, An-Nadr, who's the same age as al-Zuhri, is also a scholar. Now here's the thing about Imam Malik's brother. Imam Malik's brother, subhanAllah, it's interesting, because his brother, because he's the same age as al-Zuhri, Imam Malik rahimahullah, when he was growing up, they would say that هذا أخو النضر, that's the brother of An-Nadr. But then when Imam Malik became the person he was, they started saying to An-Nadr that هذا أخو Malik, that's the brother of Malik. So the fortunes changed, because An-Nadr was known as, as being a student of hadith and as being a great scholar in his own right. And subhanAllah, the roots are all there. His mother, we're going to see, is also a very big influence in his life. His father, Imam Malik rahimahullah's father, what was his profession? What did they learn? What's mentioned in the book of Al-Dhahabi, he says, كَانَ أَبَاهُ يَصْنَعُ النِّبَالِ, that his father used to make arrows for a living. And Imam Malik also learned how to make arrows when he was a young child. So, here's Medina. Medina is the bastion of knowledge. It's the place where everyone came to learn the sunnah. the place where even where even the rulers would send their children to learn, by the way. Even if the Khilafah was based outside of Medina, we'll find that the Khulafa would send their kids to Medina to learn with the scholars of Medina. So they had that reputation. And we're going to find that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, from a political perspective, though we're not going to go too deep into this yet, from a political perspective, he likens himself, and not just politically, but in many ways, to Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu. Abdullah ibn Umar settled Medina when there was turmoil, and Abdullah ibn Umar, he was not ambiguous in his positions. He was very much so public. If any of you remember, if any of you got a chance to study Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu with us as well, he's someone that wasn't ambiguous in his positions and his statements, but at the same time, he settled Medina and he avoided, the fitan. He avoided political turmoil. And Abdullah ibn Umar told, at the time, because he acted as an advisor to the Khulafa, he said to Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu, and he said to Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, even as they were at, war with each other, because they would all seek advice from him, he said, "In kuntuma turidan al-mashura, fa'alaykuma bidar al-hijra mahd al-sunnah." He said, if you guys want advice, then you need to come to Dar al-Hijra. You come to this place, the place of the Hijra, Mahd al-Sunnah, the cradle of the Sunnah, is Medina. So Medina is praised, and obviously Fada'il al-Medina are many from the Prophet ﷺ as well. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala did not travel outside of Medina. He stayed in Medina. His whole life was in Medina. He doesn't go to Iraq. He doesn't, other than going to Hajj and Umrah and Mecca, you don't find Imam Malik ever leaving Medina. And he's going to live a very long life, but he's like, I'm staying in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man istata'a minkum an yamuta fil Medina falyaf'al." There's an authentic hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever amongst you can manage to die in Medina, then let him do so. Because if anyone dies in Medina, then I will intercede for him on the Day of Judgment. So Imam Malik took it very seriously. So from the time he's born till the time of his death, he stays in Medina. There's not a single documented report that officially establishes that he ever left Medina. SubhanAllah. Now, who was his mother? Okay, and his status, by the way, as we said, Imam Abu Hanifa, there's the dispute over whether or not he's a tabi'i. All of the other scholars fall into the third generation, for sure. Imam Malik never interacted with a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. Anas passed away the same year as him, and Anas passed away in Iraq. Now, the extraordinary thing about him is his mother. Okay? Aliya bint Sharik. Now with Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, his birth was strange in and of itself. And I know that a lot of times we hear these narrations and they are plentiful. If it was just one odd narration, I wouldn't even mention it. But it's narrated by Ma'in ibn Isa, it's narrated by Ash-Shafi'i, it's narrated by many, that the pregnancy of Imam Malik lasted for 2 to 3 years even, that he was in his mother's womb forever. In essence, they thought it was a stillbirth that was just stuck in his mother's womb and wasn't going to come out. And so Aliya was pregnant, and Allahu Alam if they thought she was pregnant earlier than she actually was, or what it may be, and if it was really, a year or whatever it may be. But he's a miracle in that sense that, they thought that she had an issue because the baby was there for such a long time. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala stayed, it took him a long time to come out. And the indication of Imam Malik rahimahullah, his physical appearance, there's some narrations that suggest that he was, albino, because he's definitely described as having very white skin, very blonde hair, very blue eyes, which is not something traditional to the Arabs at that time, the Yemenis at that time. So Imam Malik rahimahullah had very white skin, very blonde hair, very blue eyes, and some of them suggested that it had something to do with that, but he was very, very, very handsome. Imam Malik rahimahullah was a beautiful baby, was very handsome, very good looking his entire life. Now, what did his mother do? All right. Now, Aliya bint Sharik, I'll just mention this from a historical perspective. There's a fabricated racist story. It really is very racist. There's a fabricated story that I've seen in some books, and I've seen, mentioned some places, that would say that Imam Malik's father, when he entered upon Aliya for the first time, that she had very dark skin and he was disappointed. So in essence, he left her for many, many, many years, and then came back later on and found Imam Malik and said, okay, fine, I'll stay with you guys now. This story has absolutely no basis in the Sunnah. Aliya, bint Sharik, and the father of Imam Malik, clearly played a very, very crucial role in his life throughout his entire life. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, growing up though, wasn't very religious. And this is something that's very important to point out here. The turning point can be in someone's life at any time. Imam Malik used to play with pigeons all the time. That was their entertainment, playing with pigeons. And Imam Malik wanted to be a singer. He didn't want to be a alim. He wanted to be a singer. Everyone else was a scholar in his family. He wanted to be a singer. And he was set on it too. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that my mother, she would try to talk me out of it. And he says that كانت أمي تعممني. She would put the turban on me. And she would say to me, تعلم العلم, go and study and seek knowledge. And then finally, she said particularly, اذهب إلى ربيعة, go to Rabi'a, فَتَعَلَّمْ مِنْ أَدَبِهِ قَبْلَ عِلْمِهِ. He said, when I was still just a little child, she dressed me with a turban and she put the thobe on me and things of that sort. And she said, go to Rabi'a. Rabi'a was one of the most prominent scholars of Medina. Rabi'a ibn Abd al-Rahman. Okay? Rabi'atul Ra'i was his nickname. So she said, go to Rabi'a. Rabi'atul Ra'i, Rabi'a ibn Abd al-Rahman, and learn from his adab before his knowledge. I want you to study his manners. I want you to spend some time with him and take from his manners. And subhanAllah, the beauty of that is that, as the ulama mentioned here, that Imam Malik's mother was very much so in tune with her society, meaning she used to go out to the halaqat, she used to go out to the lectures, the classes. She herself was also learning. And we'll see that out of the teachers, out of the 4 Imams, Imam Malik probably had the most female teachers and the most female students, by the way. He had a lot of female teachers, a lot of female students. Okay, his mother was very active in knowledge as well. So she didn't just say, go find one of those mashayikh in the masjid. And she didn't say, go see Abu Zur'a, like Abu Hanifa's mom did. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah's mom was very simple, as we said. She was very much so in tune with knowledge. So she said, go to this particular sheikh. She's actually directing his pursuit of knowledge when he's very young. So Imam Malik rahimahullah was sent to Rabi'a on a consistent basis for 2 years. He learned from his adab, but it didn't do away with his wanting to be a singer and his wanting to sort of do his own thing. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, even after that, it seems there's a period of time, he didn't dedicate himself to knowledge. And this is just the human side of the Imams. Imam Malik rahimahullah would practice his singing. Imam Malik wore earrings, all right? Yeah. Think about that, subhanAllah. Imam Malik, the man who's going to be Imam Malik, used to wear earrings, used to practice his singing. And he used to just spend a huge amount of time playing with his pigeons and singing. And then one day, and his mom actually told him one time, this is funny, his mom actually told him, she said, Imam Malik told her, look, I want to be a singer. She said, you don't have the looks of a singer. All right? So she was like, so they're trying to stir him away from this singing thing of his. So Imam Malik rahimahullah says that, this is the turning point in his life. He says, كَانَ لِي أَخٌ فِي سِنِّ إِبْنِ شِهَابٍ. He says that I had a brother that was the same age as Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, and that's an-Nadr. He says, فَأَلْقَى أَبِي يَوْمًا عَلَيْنَا مَسْأَلَةً. One time our father asked us a question. We were both sitting with our dad and he asked us a question. And he says that فَأَصَابَ أَخِي وَأَخْطَأْتُ. That my brother got the answer right and I made a mistake. So he says, قَالَ لِي أَبِي أَلْهَتْكَ الْحَمَامُ عَنْ طَلَبِ الْعِلْمِ. My father said to me, your pigeons made you too busy to seek knowledge. Like his father almost dismissed him, right? Like, you're not like a Nadr. A Nadr got it right. Your father, your habit of just playing with the pigeons all the time and, doing all these wasteful things, but, it distracted you from seeking true knowledge. So Imam Malik rahimahullah says, فَغَضِبْتُ. I got angry. وَانْقَطَعْتُ إِلَىٰ إِبْنِ Hurmuz, 7 سنين. He said, that's when I dedicated myself to knowledge. He said, I got angry. I was like, I'm going to prove my dad wrong. And this is when he's young. And it shows you that initially, that's what he wanted. He just wanted to prove his dad wrong. Okay, and I wanted to, and I wanted to prove that I wasn't a loser, because in the household, he was the guy that was, falling out from the house. He's the one that's not doing what everyone else is doing. The entire house is involved in hadith and ilm except for him. So he says, I got angry and I went to spend 7 years with Abdullah ibn Yazid ibn Hurmuz. Abdullah ibn Yazid ibn Hurmuz was one of the greatest scholars of Medina as well. from the fuqaha of Medina. He used to lead the salah in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. He was a freed slave who was blind. So he was, subhanAllah, very, he came from from a harsh background, and at the same time, he was blind. But Imam Malik, rahimahullah, said, I'm going to go spend time with him. So he said that I spent 7 years with Ibn Hurmuz. He says, "Lam akhluthu bi ghayri," that I did not mix with any of the scholars except for him for 7 years. So for 7 years, this is in essence Imam Malik's Hammad. What Hammad is to Abu Hanifa, Ibn Hurmuz is to Imam Malik. He said, for 7 years, I studied with him alone and nobody else. I just went to him and nobody else. And then he said, after that 7 years, I spent another 5 years with him and other teachers as well. So that made it a total of 13 years with just this one man of Ibn Hurmuz. So this is the greatest influence in his life, is Ibn Hurmuz. He says that I immediately fell in love with him. SubhanAllah, seeing Ibn Hurmuz and spending time with him, Imam Malik, it changed for him. Initially, this was just fine, I'm going to do it just to prove you guys that I can be a scholar too. But instead, he fell in love with Ibn Hurmuz. And he says that I got to a point, he says, كنت أجعل في كمي تمرا وأناوله صبيانا وأقول لهم إن سألكم أحد عن الشيخ فقولوا مشغول. He said, I used to carry dates with me. That's the candy back then, right? I used to carry some dates with me. And he said that I would give it to the children, and I would say to the children, stand outside the house of Ibn Hurmuz, and if anyone comes, tell him he's busy. So in essence, Imam Malik's like, tell him he doesn't have time for any of you guys. I'm going to hog them all to myself. So Imam Malik said, I could not get enough of this man. And he used to state, he says, كنت آتي ابن هرمز بكرة فما أخرج من بيته حتى الليل. He said, I used to come to him very early in the morning. And subhanAllah, they say in fact that he used to come to Ibn Hurmuz before Fajr. And he would walk him to Fajr. And he says that I would not leave him until the late night. And he used to sometimes go out in the middle of the night. And if any of you have stayed in Medina, sometimes at night it gets cold in Medina. So he said, I used to take, cotton pants so that when I sat on the rocks, I wouldn't freeze, because that's how early he would go out to Ibn Hurmuz. And he would walk Ibn Hurmuz to the masjid because he was a blind man. He would serve him. Just like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah used to serve Hammad. This is a constant thing. And he says that one time, وَقَالَ Ibn Hurmuz يَوْمًا لِجَارِيَةٍ, that he had a servant with him. And he said, مَنْ بِالْبَابِ, who's outside? So the servant said, فَلَمْ تَرَى إِلَّا مَالِكًا, she only saw Imam Malik rahimahullah. فَرَجَعَتْ فَقَالَتْ مَا ثَمَّ إِلَّا ذَاكَ الْأَشْقَرِ. She came back and she said, the only one left is Al-Ashqar. Al-Ashqar literally would be the one with the white skin, because Imam Malik again stood out for how white his skin was. So he responded to her and he says, إِدْعِيهِ فَذَلِكَ أَعَالِمُ النَّاسِ. Said, go ahead and tell him to come in. Call him and tell him to come in, because this man's going to be the scholar of the people. He is going to be the alim of the people. SubhanAllah. So Ibn Hurmuz also recognized something special about Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, that he was going to be, very, very, very special, and that he was going to be the scholar of his people. And Ibn Hurmuz, was someone that, and we're going to find the beauty of Imam Malik rahimahullah is absolutely everything that he was prominent for, you can find it in one of his teachers. So you want to study Imam Malik, you study his teachers. Imam Malik was famous for saying, La adri, I don't know. This is the madhab of Imam Malik rahimahullah, is the madhab of I don't know, la adri. If he doesn't know, he says I don't know. Where did he get this from? He said that I used to hear Ibn Hurmuz say that Ibn Hurmuz, he used to say that it's befitting that a scholar teaches his students to say la adri. A scholar should teach his students how to say I don't know, to a point that it becomes a methodology. That that when people don't know something, they say, I don't know. Because there's a sense of arrogance in a person sometimes where they don't want to admit that they don't know. Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, let's go back to Abdullah ibn Umar. If you guys remember, people used to ask him questions and he'd say, I don't know. La adri. And one time a man said, you don't know? He kind of mocked him and walked away. And Ibn Umar smiled and he said, Alhamdulillah, someone asked Ibn Umar a question and Ibn Umar said, I don't know. Like I'm happier being, humiliated or humbled in front of this man than being humiliated by Allah on the Day of Judgment for speaking without knowledge. So Ibn Hurmuz said, learn it like a methodology. Make it a methodology in your life. A scholar should teach his students how to say, I don't know when they don't know. And that should become something that they inherit, and that should become something that they keep. And Abdullah ibn Wahb, the student of Imam Malik, he said that most of the time when Imam Malik was asked a question, he said, I don't know. So that's the vast majority of times with Imam Malik rahimahullah is la adri. Imam Malik rahimahullah also says something very beautiful and important here to connect the emotional dots between Imam Malik and the early generations. Ibn Hurmuz lived very early on. He met many of the Sahaba. He's a tabi'i. And Imam Malik rahimahullah said, Ibn Hurmuz sometimes, he used to say, close all the doors. And when he would say close all the doors, here's what he wanted to do. He said he would start reminiscing on what Medina was like when the Sahaba were still alive, and he would cry and cry and cry. So Ibn Hurmuz would say, all right, let's stop talking about fiqh for a moment, hadith, close the door. And he'd just start reminiscing, what was it like when Umar was around? What was it like when Uthman was around? What was it like when Ali was around? And he starts just talking about Medina, subhanAllah. And you could imagine that, what this is building in Imam Malik rahimahullah for the Prophet ﷺ as well, because this is the Medina that the Prophet ﷺ established. So he's constantly being reminded of the Sahaba, and Medina is even becoming more beloved to him, rahimahullah ta'ala. So that's his first teacher, Ibn Hurmuz. The second teacher is Nafi' Mawla Abdullah ibn Umar. Nafi', the freed slave of Abdullah ibn Umar. Now, if you go back to the class on Abdullah ibn Umar, Nafi' is the main narrator of Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He's a student. He's someone that Ibn Umar freed, and he just wanted to stay around him. So even though he was a free man technically, he just lived with Ibn Umar. And he stayed with him, and he learned from him, and he accompanied him everywhere. Nafi' was also a freed slave, and he was from Al-Habasha, so he was Abyssinian. And subhanAllah, Nafi', this just shows you, by the way, the way that the people held the companions and those that spent time with the companions in high regard. Nafi' spoke very broken Arabic. If it makes you guys feel any better about your broken Arabic at the end of Bayna, if you didn't quite get where you wanted to. Nafi' radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Nafi' didn't have the best Arabic. He spoke with a very heavy accent, okay, hard pronunciation, and he spoke some broken Arabic. But subhanAllah, when he quoted a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, or he quoted something Ibn Umar said, it was all of a sudden perfect eloquence. So meaning he wouldn't make any errors, or he wouldn't have any issues saying that Rasulullah ﷺ said or Ibn Umar said. But Nafi', he was a great muhaddith, and basically he followed Ibn Umar's footsteps. And Nafi' would narrate something, if you guys remember, Nafi' would narrate something that Rasulullah ﷺ did, and then the end of the hadith would say, وَكَانَ ibn Umar يَفْعَلُ. And Ibn Umar used to do that too. So Nafi' would hear the hadith, and then he'd see how Ibn Umar practiced it, and then Nafi' would then turn around and teach it. Nafi' lived a very long life, and that's why, subhanAllah, he influences this madhab so much. Nafi' died when Imam Malik was 24 years old. So Imam Malik, rahimahullah, really got to spend some time with him as a teenager and in his early 20s. And Nafi', when he got older, he didn't answer many questions. He didn't really give lectures or classes. Nafi' was just he was a very, I don't want to say the word harsh, but he was to himself. He went out to the masjid, he prayed, he went back home. That was the last years of Nafi', and that was the period of his life that Imam Malik caught. He followed the sunnah the way he learned it from Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And people were almost scared to talk to him, because he was almost in his own world, right? Just like Ibn Umar was in his own world of trying to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, Nafi' was living and walking the sunnah, but at the same time, Nafi' was extremely quiet, and unless it was the circles of hadith where he would just give the hadith he knew and what Ibn Umar said, he was to himself. He used to go home, go to the masjid and things of that sort. So Imam Malik said, I was scared of Nafi'. I was actually terrified of him. That, I was in awe of him. And so he said that, I wouldn't knock on his door. I wouldn't dare knock on his door or bother him after salah. Instead, Imam Malik, rahimahullah, used to go and wait outside the house of Nafi', but he wouldn't stand in front of the door of Nafi'. He'd kind of keep a little bit of a distance, so it would seem like it was coincidental when Nafi' comes out of his house. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah, said that there were no trees around the house of Nafi'. So he's like, I would just burn in the hot sun. And in fact, his mother and his father, they would watch him. They'd watch Imam Malik. See, these are the parents, the proud parents now. And the mother, Imam Malik, Aliya, she actually felt sorry for him. And so she complained to the father, right? She complained to Malik's father, Anas. He said, look, he's going to burn out there, right? He's going to have a heat stroke or something. And the father of Imam Malik responded and said, leave him, فَإِنَّهُ يَحْفَظُ hadith Rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But leave him because he's memorizing the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He'll be okay. So Nafi' would come out of his house and Imam Malik would make it as if he was just walking and he just happened to be crossing next to him. So he would say Assalamu alaikum to him. Nafi' would say Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And Imam Malik said Nafi' wasn't interested in small talk. He said, I would just ask him, what did Ibn Umar say about this? What did Ibn Umar say about this? So every conversation between me and my teacher was, what did Ibn Umar say about this? And Nafi' would respond and say, Ibn Umar said this or did this. SubhanAllah. So that's the effect of Nafi'. And we're going to see the madhab of Imam Malik rahimahullah. The approach of Imam Malik is basically all from the family of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. He admired Umar, he admired Abdullah ibn Umar, he admired Nafi', he admired Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So this entire family of Umar ibn al-Khattab really had the deepest influence on Imam Malik rahimahullah and the way he approached things. Then you have the next teacher. And this is the fourth teacher now. So we said first it was Rabi'a, who we really learned adab from, manners from. Then it was Ibn Hurmuz. Then it was Nafi'. And then the fourth teacher is Al-Imam Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri is, again, one of the greatest scholars of hadith of all time. He is the man that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz gave the official command to go out and collect ahadith. And he was sort of in charge of all of the students of hadith, going around the world, collecting ahadith, bringing them together and so on and so forth. This was Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri's job. And this man, subhanAllah, the famous story about him is that his wife used to say that, I wouldn't be jealous if he married 3 other wives. I don't have any jealousy in regards to him getting married to another wife. She said, the pain that he causes me by the amount of time he spends with his books is more than any of you have from the amount of times that your husband spend with other wives. Like, he spends so much time with his books, right? He's all into his hadith, he's all into his books and things of that sort. And in fact, subhanAllah, Imam al-Zuhri died in his library. Imam al-Zuhri died in his library. So Imam al-Zuhri is someone, and some of them said that he had so many books that they actually fell on top of him, subhanAllah. Imam al-Zuhri used to collect these books, he used to collect the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And Imam Malik, takes this love for hadith really from az-Zuhri. And Imam Malik used to sit in az-Zuhri's classes. And initially, when his memory wasn't that strong, he had this rope and he'd tie a knot every time he heard a hadith. So he'd tie a knot, he'd tie a knot, he'd tie a knot, he'd tie a knot. And then at the end of it, he'd go back and he'd see if the hadith he memorized matched the number of knots he had. So one time when he tied the knots, he tied 29 knots. He tied 30 knots, and he only knew 29 ahadith, and Imam Malik was really upset with himself. Right? He was really mad at himself that he only remembered 29 of the 30 ahadith from Imam al-Zuhri that day. So he goes around the Zuhri, he always has this rope, and he's sitting there tying the knot, so that he can remember. And subhanAllah, he used to visit az-Zuhri at all times. Now the day of Eid in Medina, and the day of Eid in general in the Muslim world, was a time that everyone took a break. The scholars took a break, the students took a break. There were no circles of hadith and circles of fiqh and things of that sort on the day of Eid. That was a time to celebrate with your family, to have fun, to do those types of things, to rejoice. And so Imam Malik rahimahullah, he goes to az-Zuhri's house on the day of Eid. And az-Zuhri was kind of taken aback by that. Like, what are you doing here? It's Eid. So he walks in and az-Zuhri says, should I get you some food, some sweets? What is it that, And Imam Malik rahimahullah said, honestly, I just want to learn. I'm not here to eat. I'm not here to drink. I'm not here to, eat any sweets. I'm just here to learn. So az-Zuhri, he laughed. He said, even on the day of Eid, Imam Malik said, learning a hadith is my Eid. Learning a hadith that's my happiness. That's my festival, whatever it is. So Imam az-Zuhri, he said, okay, fine, go bring your scrolls, bring your pen and start writing. So he gave him, 30 ahadith. And this was, I guess, it seems like this was a tradition of az-Zuhri to give 30 ahadith at a time, to teach 30 ahadith with their explanation at a time. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah, after he wrote it down, he said to Imam az-Zuhri that I memorized them. Imam al-Zuhri said, really? He said, yeah. He said, read them back to me. And he took the scrolls, and Imam al-Zuhri looked at the scrolls, and Imam Malik read back 30 ahadith. This isn't al-Bukhari with the 1,000 and things, 10,000 things of that sort. This is still pretty impressive though. 30 ahadith right there on the spot. So he read back the 30 ahadith, and Imam al-Zuhri said, قُمْ فَأَنْتَ مِنْ أَوْعِيَةِ الْعِلْمِ. He said, stand up, and you are going to be a vessel of knowledge. Allah has made you a vessel of knowledge. So he's getting praise from his teachers. They're seeing that he's special. This is consistent from all of his teachers. Okay? Then you have, I'm going to go through 6 teachers inshallah, then we'll move on. Then you have the 5th teacher, which is Ja'far as-Sadiq, who we mentioned. Rahimahullah ta'ala had a very powerful influence on Imam Abu Hanifa. But him and Imam Abu Hanifa were the same age. So he's older than Malik. And he's more of a teacher to Imam Malik rahimahullah than he is to Imam Abu Hanifa. And this is the great-great-grandson of the Prophet ﷺ as well. So he's the great-grandson of Al-Husayn radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And Imam Malik rahimahullah said, I learned from him how to worship Allah properly. See, subhanAllah, like I went to many people and I learned hadith here and these types of things and adab from Rabi'a, manners from Rabi'a. He said, but اختلفت إلى جعفر فما كنت أراه إلا على 3 خصال. He said that when I went to Ja'far, I would see him in one of 3 states. إما مصلي, either he was praying, وإما صائما, or he was fasting, وإما يقرأ القرآن, or he was reading Quran. So he said that these were the 3 states I always found him in. He says, وَرَأَيْتُهُ يُحَدِّثُ عَنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. Or he said, وَمَا رَأَيْتُهُ يُحَدِّثُ عَنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ إِلَّا عَلَى طَهَارَةٍ. I never heard him speak about the Prophet ﷺ except that he was in a state of wudu. So this is also something that Imam Malik is going to be famous for, that Imam Malik would refuse to speak about the Prophet ﷺ except that he was in wudu, right? And he looked a certain way. So he got that from Ja'far. He says, وَكَانَ لَا يَتَكَلَّمُ فِي مَا لَا يَعْنِي. Ja'far never talked about things that weren't beneficial and had nothing to do with him. Imam Malik, the same thing. Imam Malik never got involved in what was going on and things of that sort. He kind of kept himself away from that stuff. And he says, وَكَانَ مِنَ الْعُلَمَاءِ الْعُبَّادِ الزُّهَاتِ. He was from the scholars, the worshippers, and the ascetics. الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ اللَّهِ. Those who truly fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, tazkiyah, worship, ibadah, and respecting the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he got it from Ja'far as-Sadiq. He spent about 3 or 4 years with Ja'far as-Sadiq, rahimahullah ta'ala. Then finally, subhanallah, the great tabi'i, Muhammad ibn al-Mukandir. Muhammad ibn al-Mukandir. Muhammad ibn al-Mukandir was known for his tears. But not just any tears. Muhammad ibn al-Mukandir could not speak about the Prophet ﷺ without crying, even though he never met him. This was a trait of Ibn Umar as well, by the way. Right? We mentioned it when the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ would be brought up, Ibn Umar would tear up. Muhammad ibn Mukandir, he never met the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ would not be brought up except that he would be brought to tears. And Imam Malik says something beautiful. He said, when I used to be troubled and when I used to feel, like I was going through things in life, he said, I'd just go look at Muhammad ibn Mukandir and my heart would be put to ease. So just looking at the man put me to ease. SubhanAllah, that this man clearly had such a love for the Messenger ﷺ that it really put me to ease. So those are the teachers of Imam Malik. All right? But the influences in the life of Imam Malik, the consistent connection, again, is to the family of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He taught from the area that Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu used to teach. Okay? Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he learned from Nafi'. And then, again, so for Medina, you're going to see the biggest chart here. So you're going to see the amount of Sahaba and who they influenced, and how he has a connection to all of these companions that are mentioned here. Ubay ibn Ka'ab, Zayd ibn Thabit, Aisha, Ibn Umar, Uthman, Umar, Abu Bakr. Who did they teach? And then it mentions these students, Ubaydullah, Urwa ibn Zubair, Al-Qasim, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, Kharija, Salim ibn Abdullah ibn Umar. Now, by the way, these 7 here in the second chain, and those are, and it's actually online, by the way, the PDF is there for those of you that are watching online. Those 7 are known as Al-Fuqaha As-Sab'a, the 7 Fuqaha. That second chain that starts with Ubaydillah. All right, these are Al-Fuqaha As-Sab'a, the 7 Fuqaha. They were appointed by Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. They were the 7 jurists of Medina that were appointed by Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and then all of these in essence had students that all taught Imam Malik. So he has a consistent connection, he has the influence of these multiple companions from the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. And one thing as well, he was born into the life, he witnessed the Khilafah of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Imam Malik rahimahullah was very young, but Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was a hero to him when he was very young. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was like a legend in like the entire ummah. Like this man came and like just changed everything. So Malik rahimahullah deeply loved Umar ibn Abdul Aziz to the point that Imam Malik is actually one of the biographers of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So there are narrations from Malik in the biography of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. He actually helped compile the biographies of him that were written even in that time. And the beauty of that is, how does it connect to the Prophet ﷺ? Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu says about Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, I never saw anyone whose salah resembles the salah of the Prophet ﷺ more than him. Even though Anas met all of the companions, Anas said Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who comes 2 generations after, he said that his salah resembled the salah of the Prophet ﷺ more than anyone I've ever met. And so that influence is coming now to Imam Malik rahimahullah. And obviously what Anas is talking about, the length, the duration, the khushu', right? The way that Umar prayed, it's as if you're looking at the Prophet ﷺ praying when you looked at Umar ibn Abdul Aziz pray. Right? And Imam Malik rahimahullah, he took that influence. All right? He also learned from the son of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. So there's the influence of Abdullah ibn Zubayr through his son Amir. Amir ibn Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And there are many, many other scholars that I could mention. Zayd ibn Aslam, Salih ibn Kaysan. You really can't go through all of the teachers of Imam Malik. What's the point of mentioning all this here? Imam Malik rahimahullah said, I did not give a single fatwa in my life until 70 of my teachers gave me permission. SubhanAllah. So he waited until 70 of his teachers told him, you're ready now, before he gave a single fatwa in his life. He wasn't, hasty. He wasn't rushing for it. He didn't study with Ibn Hurmuz and then go out and say, I'm the student of Ibn Hurmuz, I know what I'm talking about here. 70 teachers gave him permission to give fatwa. Then he said, okay, fine, I'll give a fatwa. And even then, la adri, I don't know, was most of his fatwa. Right? So Imam Malik rahimahullah has these very special things. Now, what are the qualities of Imam Malik rahimahullah? Number one, we start with obviously his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we do with all of the Imams. What was his fear of Allah like? And the best way to describe that, and Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he says that كان الليث أفقه من Malik. Al-Layth ibn Sa'd, who was the scholar of Ahl al-Hadith in Egypt, he said Al-Layth is actually more knowledgeable than Imam Malik. He says, إِلَّا أَنَّ أَصْحَابَهُ لَمْ يَقُومُوا بِهِ. He said, but Al-Layth's students did not write down his knowledge like Imam Malik. In essence, Imam al-Shafi'i is saying Al-Layth, the teacher of Imam Malik, one of the teachers of Imam Malik, is more deserving of a madhab than any of us. I mean, he deserves a school of thought. But his students did not write down his knowledge. Imam Ahmad was sitting in the lecture, this is showing you the connection now, where Shafi'i said that. Imam Ahmad is sitting in Shafi'i's lecture where Shafi'i said that about Malik. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he said, لَعَلَّ لَهُ سَرِيرًا. He said it must be that Imam Malik had a secret between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah made him the person that he was. See how they thought, their ulama thought, they recognized success comes from Allah, sincerity. So he said it must have been the sincerity of Imam Malik that Allah made him the person that he was. Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahimahullah, the great student of Imam Abu Hanifa. And again, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, and inshallah one day we're definitely going to go deep into his life as well. Abdullah ibn Mubarak was one of the students of Abu Hanifa that also came and studied with Imam Malik. And Abdullah ibn Mubarak, obviously his loyalty remains to Imam Abu Hanifa. He says that had it not been for Abu Hanifa, I would have been a mubtada' or kuntu kasa'ir nas. I would have been an innovator, I would have been like everybody else. Meaning Abu Hanifa is the one that turned me into the man that I was, molded me into the person I was. He said, but as for Malik, listen to what he says. He says, رَأَيْتُ مَالِكَ. I saw Malik. فَرَأَيْتُهُ مِنَ الْخَاشِعِينَ. He said, I saw him from those who have great humility. And he says, وَإِنَّمَا رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ بِسَرِيرَةٍ كَانَتْ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ. Allah exalted him due to a secret that was between him and Allah. By the way, in the circles of knowledge, a lot of times this is common language amongst the ulama, that when they see someone granted success, they say maybe there's a sarira, maybe there's a secret between him and Allah. A person with a diseased heart says he's only there because he knows this person, and he's only there because of YouTube, and he's only there because of right? A person with a diseased heart sees the success of someone in ilm and da'wah, and they start to pass them off. These people, they said if Allah gave someone success, they said maybe there's a secret between him and Allah. So he says that وَإِنَّمَا رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ بِسَرِيرَةٍ كَانَتْ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ وَذَلِكَ أَنِّي كَثِيرًا مَا كُنْتُ أَسْمَعُهُ يَقُولُ He said that I used to constantly hear Imam Malik say, مَنْ أَحَبَّ أَنْ يُفْتَحَ لَهُ فُرْجَةً فِي قَلْبِهِ. These are beautiful words, by the way, in Arabic. And I'm reading the whole thing in Arabic so that you can really understand it if you can. مَنْ أَحَبَّ أَنْ يُفْتَحَ لَهُ فُرْجَةً فِي قَلْبِهِ. Whoever wants his heart to be opened, whoever loves that Allah opens his heart. Opens it to what? To guidance and to knowledge. Whoever loves that his heart be opened. وَيَنْجُو مِنْ غَمَرَاتِ الْمَوْتِ. And whoever wants to be saved from the pain of death. وَأَهْوَالِ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. And from the terror of the day of standing, from the terror of the day of judgment. He says, فَلْيَكُنْ فِي عَمَلِهِ فِي السِّرِّ أَكْثَرَ مِنْهُ فِي الْعَلَانِيَةِ. Then let him make sure that his actions in private are greater than his actions in public. You want Allah to raise you, you want Allah to open your heart, you want Allah to save you from the pain of death and the pain of the day of judgment. Make sure your secret deeds between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are greater than your public deeds. So Imam Malik rahimahullah was very, very, very dedicated to hiding his private deeds, to the point that, we mentioned Imam Malik rahimahullah, Imam Abu Hanifa had a mark on his head from the amount of sujood that he did. Now, by the way, one of the brothers asked me yesterday, is that what Allah means when He says the mark of sujood? No, some people just don't have that mark, but they make a lot of sujood. But naturally, if you're constantly putting your head on the ground and those types of things, then you might develop something here. It might just be a really bad pimple, but you might develop something here from the amount of salah that you do, and that's something that's common. I saw it in many of my teachers as well. But especially the older ones, right? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time in your life. You know what Imam Malik used to do? He used to pray on a very soft rug because he didn't want people to say that there's a mark of sujood on his head. He didn't want that. He wasn't into all that glamour and all that, oh, mashallah, Imam Malik. No, he didn't want that. So Imam Malik would bow his head on purpose on a very soft rug so that no one would see anything on his forehead and say that Imam Malik prays a lot at night. He used to hide his knowledge. He used to hide his deeds between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't find much on the salah of Imam Malik, because Imam Malik went to that extent to make sure no one was in his house when he was worshipping Allah, and to make sure that these were private things between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam Malik has a very beautiful statement. He says, لَيْسَ الْعِلْمِ كَثْرَةِ الرِّوَيَاتِ. He said, true knowledge is not memorizing a lot of hadith. He says, وَلَكِنَّ الْعِلْمِ. He says that rather knowledge is nur, is a light. يَجْعَلُهُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. وَإِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ نُورًا يَجْعَلُهُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. Knowledge is but a light that Allah puts in the heart of the believer. Knowledge is not memorizing a lot of ahadith. Knowledge is a light that Allah puts in the heart of the believer. So Imam Malik had this deep connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he wanted it to be that way. And Imam Malik rahimahullah understood. And it's very important to get this part, by the way, before you go into the harshness of Imam Malik. Because again, Imam Malik is not Abu Hanifa. Right? They're different personalities. That he had something between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first quality. The second quality is his love for the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You won't find it you will not find the love of the sunnah in any of the other imams the way you find it in Imam Malik. The man loved the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he used to say that the sunnah is Noah's ark. Whoever boards it is saved. Whoever is left behind drowns. So he used to call the sunnah Noah's ark. SubhanAllah. So he loved the sunnah. And I want to show you guys something really, really cool about how he wanted to be so close to the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I want to show you where Imam Malik's house was. Imam Malik moved into the house of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. He purchased the house that Ibn Mas'ud used to own so that he could be right in front of the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this was the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's Imam Malik's house, the blue box right there. And so he lived right in front of the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So he used to be very close in our modern day masjid. That's where it would be. So next time you're in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, You know that area right where it opens up? That's where Imam Malik used to live. That's where Abdullah bin Mas'ud had a house. And many of the Sahaba, even when they went out, they still maintained their homes in Medina, and they'd spend some time there when they came for Hajj and Umrah and so on and so forth. So Imam Malik lived very, very close to the Prophet ﷺ. He used to walk around Medina only barefoot. Because Imam Malik said, maybe the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ were here and I don't feel worthy to be wearing shoes in the place that the Prophet ﷺ put his footsteps. Now, is that a sunnah? Do you have to do that? No, it would actually become a bid'ah. It would actually become an innovation if everyone started walking around Medina barefoot. Because then it would, because the Sahaba didn't necessarily do that. This is just something personal between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He didn't feel worthy. He held the Prophet ﷺ in that very high regard. So he was like, I don't even want my shoes to be falling on the same spots that the Prophet ﷺ's feet used to fall. Just like his teacher. Now, who can remember which teacher used to do wudu before he would talk about the Prophet ﷺ? Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Imam Malik took it a step further. Before every gathering of hadith, Imam Malik rahimahullah used to do ghusl. He used to take a shower. He used to dress in the best clothes. He used to put on his turban. He used to burn incense, set the scene, and he said, now we can talk about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. When someone would come to Imam Malik's house and say, yeah, Imam, I'm coming to ask you about a hadith, he'd say, hold on. And he'd go and he'd wash himself and he'd dress himself and he'd go through this entire process every single time because he held the Prophet ﷺ in that regard. And subhanAllah, this is going to be something, you're going to connect a lot of dots with Imam Malik. Bishr ibn al-Harith, rahimahullah, he said that Imam Malik looked like a king. Like when you looked at Imam Malik, it was like looking at a king. He said he had a head cover. He had something that he wore on his head that was worth 500 dinars. The best turban, the best clothes, and his haiba, the way that he carried himself. I mean, he said when you saw Imam Malik, it was like you were looking at a king. And he said that, some people criticized the way that he dresses before he talks about the way he dresses in Majalis al-Hadith, when he talks about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, you dress way too good when you talk about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And he used to respond, أُوَقِّرُ بِهِ حَدِيثَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. I'm only doing that to show respect to the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Malik rahimahullah once had a student, and while they were walking home from the masjid to his house, it's not a very long walk, the student said, Shaykh, I want to ask you about a hadith. And he said, did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say this and this and that? Imam Malik looked at him. And Imam Malik, and this is the personality of Imam Malik, he said, I used to respect you as a student, but not anymore. How dare you talk about the Prophet ﷺ's hadith as we're walking? Like, to him that was disrespect. And the student was afraid of him from that day. Like, wow, he just got told off for bringing up a hadith as they were walking. This is only Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And again, this is something that you're to respect about Imam Malik rahimahullah. This is just to show you his personality. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, there is no playing with it. Not only that, in his accepting of a hadith, if he accepted a hadith narration, and this is something very unique about Imam Malik, and this is what makes the ahadith he collects so authentic. There are systems. Essentially, when you're classing a hadith narrator, you're going to look at how trustworthy they are. So whether they're thiqa or not, or they're sadiq, saduq, if they're truthful people, if they have good memory, how strong their memory is. All right, if they had any interests, so if there was some kind of, like if I'm from a particular land, and or if I sell watermelons and I narrate a hadith about watermelons, then my hadith is rejected, even if I'm honest and trustworthy and I have good memory. If I can gain from this hadith, then it's going to be rejected. You look at certain qualifications. Was there anything traumatic, political circumstances? All of these things are taken into consideration. Imam Malik added another component. Imam Malik rahimahullah only took a hadith from people that were worshippers as well as being ulama. Meaning he had to see in you that quality of ibadah to accept your hadith, even if everything else made sense. You've got to be living the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. You can't just be narrating the ahadith. It's not enough to just have it in your memory. You've got to be walking the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So he would look at a person and he would only accept ahadith from those that used to do that. Imam Malik rahimahullah, he also introduced a system in ilm, in knowledge, which is al-ard, presenting the ahadith. And what that means is Imam Malik, he would dress himself up, he would take his shower, he would sit down in the masjid, the people would sit around him, And traditionally, the teacher would read the ahadith and the students would write down. But instead, he would have his students read the ahadith. And Imam Malik rahimahullah would correct them as they were reading, which is a very effective way of teaching. And Imam Malik rahimahullah, he would give a certain, like he'd tell you to read 30 ahadith, you read 30 ahadith, he'd go to the next person, 30 ahadith, he'd comment on them, he'd explain them, and so on and so forth. And subhanAllah, this is something that lived on in our tradition after Imam Malik rahimahullah. Almost every circle of hadith, by the way, studying a hadith, getting an ijazah in hadith is the system that Imam Malik rahimahullah had with his students. Anything he heard the Prophet ﷺ do, he made it a point to do. This is part of loving the sunnah. Anything he heard the Prophet ﷺ do. Now again, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, the great influencer of the Maliki madhab, right, was someone that was known for that. That even the other Sahaba were like, this is too much. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, anything he could possibly get together from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, he did it. So even the fruits that he used to eat, Imam Malik rahimahullah used to really like eating bananas. Bananas are good for you, by the way, right? But he used to really love eating bananas because he had a narration that the Prophet ﷺ ate bananas. And he said that bananas are the closest fruits to the fruits of Al-Jannah. Why? Because he said that you just easily peel it and you eat it. Right? And the fruits of Jannah don't require an effort. Now obviously if you ask someone who's Bengali, they're going to say it's mangoes. Right? You ask someone from different parts of the world, they're going to have their different preferences of fruit. But Imam Malik was like, hey, you know what? This is what the Prophet ﷺ ate, and this reminds me of the fruits of Al-Jannah. Just kind of shows you where he was. Now there's a very beautiful dream now that someone had of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And this was a man by the name of Abu Muawiyah. And his last name is pretty difficult. Ad-Darawardi. Abu Muawiyah Ad-Darawardi. He was a great scholar of his time. And listen to the dream he had about Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. He says, Kuntu na'iman fi al-rawda, bayna al-qabri wal-manbar. He said, I was sleeping one night in the rawda. So between the manbar of the Prophet ﷺ, his pulpit, and between his grave. He says, فَرَأَيْتُ النَّبِيَّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ قَدْ خَرَجَ مِنَ الْقَبْرِ. He said, I saw in my dream that the Prophet ﷺ rose from his grave. مُتَّكِئًا عَلَى أَبِي بَكْرٍ وَعُمَرٍ. And he was leaning on Abu Bakr and Umar. And he says, فَقُمْتُ إِلَيْهِ. That I stood up for the Prophet ﷺ. فَقُلْتُ لَهُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ مِنْ أَيْنَ جِئْتَ. I said to him, O Messenger of Allah, where did you come from? قَالَ مَضَيْتُ إِلَى مَالِكَ فَأَقَمْتُ لَهُ الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. He said that I came for Imam Malik and I've showed him the straight path. I've showed him the straight path. أَقَمْتُ لَهُ صِرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Another man had the exact same dream about Imam Malik rahimahullah. And he wrote it down for Imam Malik from Egypt. So this man sends a letter from Egypt saying, I saw this dream of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is what he said, that I showed him as-sirat al-mustaqim. Imam Malik rahimahullah, when he saw that letter, he cried and he cried and he cried. And Abu Mus'ab, he says rahimahullah ta'ala, that Imam Malik rahimahullah used to keep that letter under his place of sajda. Like it was very precious to him. And one time Abu Mus'ab says that I was with Imam Malik rahimahullah and I found that piece of paper and I read it, and as I was reading it, subhanAllah, like this is very beautiful. He says, as I was reading it out loud, Imam Malik was reading it from his memory. Like he's read that letter over and over and over again. And he said Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala would cry, and he said that day he cried that I just got up and I left. SubhanAllah, I got up and I left. So these are beautiful things that were said about Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And just to show you again, you look at how close he is to the Prophet ﷺ's grave. This is where his house was. Imam Malik rahimahullah used to teach sitting next to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ at times. I mean, imagine how beautiful this is. Imagine how close. Just less than 100 years after the Prophet ﷺ, and he sits and his halaqas are there. And there's a very famous statement that Imam Malik rahimahullah pointed to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, everyone can be taken from and rejected except for sahibu hadha al-qabr, except for the occupant of this grave. All of us can be taken from and rejected except for Rasulullah ﷺ. And he pointed, that's how close he is. He points to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and says, except for the one who occupies that grave. You guys look really tired today. I don't know why, subhanAllah, compared to yesterday. I guess you're all Hanafis. Okay? Anyway, You're like, yeah, that's not Imam Abu Hanifa anymore. What's the main quality that Imam Malik had that made him very unique? Really, it was his hayba. So we're going to talk about this. Hayba, hayba means to have a very strong demeanor, to have a presence. When you fear someone, not out of them being arrogant, not out of them, being condescending, but just because you fear their presence. They have such a presence that you naturally just feel very small in their presence. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that I have never met anyone that had the hayba of Imam Malik. Never in my life have I seen anyone that had that hayba. And he said that it was as if you were in the presence of a king and an alim at the same time. Like he was a king and a scholar at the same time. Like you're in his presence and you're just in awe of the man. His appearance, his manners, the way he carries himself. And this strong demeanor of his is very unique to him. Imam Malik rahimahullah, again now, we talked about Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Malik had a very nice house, had very nice furniture, had very nice clothes. He used to eat meat every single day, which was something that was, the people did not really do at that time. Imam Malik rahimahullah lived a very dignified life, and Imam Malik was someone who hated that a scholar teaches without wearing a jubbah, like the cloak of the scholar and the turban. And Imam Malik rahimahullah said, if you dress dignified, then it'll remind you to remain dignified. So he said he wanted his students to dress, just like his mother used to dress him when he was a child, right? Put the turban on him and dress him and say, go to Rabi'a and learn from his manners. Imam Malik said, if you look dignified, you're more likely to remember to be dignified. So Imam Malik had that presence and he lived a very comfortable life. And who did he learn this from? One of his teachers is Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, radiyallahu anhu wa rahimahullah, one of the great fuqaha of Medina. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, he has a quote where he said, there is no good in the one who doesn't seek to earn money so that he can use it to pay off his debt, preserve his honor with it, use it to fulfill the rights of people, and when he dies, have inheritance for those that are after him. Sa'id al-Musayyib basically, so again, he said a person should seek wealth so that he could pay off his debt, preserve his honor with it, use it to fulfill the rights of people, and leave inheritance to those behind him. So this is a methodology as well. And it's in direct contradiction to the thought of a scholar at that time, right? That a scholar would be very poor, a scholar would be someone that had to live in certain conditions and things of that sort. Imam Malik rahimahullah didn't see it that way. Imam Malik rahimahullah saw that the ulama had to have a certain place in society. And just like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he used to sponsor some of his students. The greatest student that he sponsored, who do you guys think it was? Ash-Shafi'i. And Imam al-Shafi'i was very poor, like we're going to talk about. Imam Malik sponsored him for 10 years as well. Gave him everything that he needed because he saw potential in him as a student. So you walk, not only were the halaqas of Imam Malik, by the way, this hayba as well, this difficulty, or not, this awe that he had, his demeanor, not only were his halaqas really, up there in terms of the incense that was being burned and the environment and things of that sort, you also had a very difficult time getting into the halaqah of Imam Malik. It wasn't easy getting into his halaqah. Meaning he had to really see you as a student with a lot of potential to invest his time in you because Imam Malik wanted to mentor his students. Okay? So he didn't just want to have a bunch of people sitting around. He wasn't interested in the numbers. It was very hard. It was like getting into Harvard at that time. SubhanAllah, getting into the halaqah of Malik was like the dream of every student. How do you get into Imam Malik's halaqah? In fact, an Imam al-Shafi'i had a difficult time getting into his halaqah. Al-Shafi'i had to get people to intercede on his behalf to tell Malik, like, this kid's for real, don't worry. He was very tough on letting people into his halaqah. There's an amazing story. The story is from a man by the name of Hisham ibn Ammar. Hisham ibn Ammar is one of the students of Imam Malik, and he's from Damascus, from Syria. And Hisham ibn Ammar, he said, my father sold our house so that he could send me to Medina to learn from Imam Malik when I was just a young teenager, 14, 15 years old. My father said, we're selling the house so that you can go and learn from Imam Malik. He paid for all of his expenses, things of that sort, gave him some time to spend, or gave him some money to spend there. He said, when I got to Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said, I entered the crowd. I just sat in his gathering. So he didn't go through the process, right? Which was actually getting admission, if you will. He just went and they're in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. The halaqas of Imam Malik were in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So he just went and he sat in the halaqah. And he said that I said to Imam Malik, Hadithni, teach me hadith. Like this kid hasn't been in Medina yet. He hasn't learned the style of the people of Medina and what's going on with the scholars. He just said to Imam Malik, Ya Imam, hadithni. Oh Imam, give me a hadith. And Imam Malik said, you're the one that should be reading a hadith to me. This is, the story here. The way that Imam Malik works is al-ard. He says, you should give me hadith. So he said, I started to argue with Imam Malik. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he just turned away from me and he got back to the other students. And he said that there was another student that took me outside and he actually hit me for talking to Imam Malik that way. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, didn't know that this was going on. But again, this was like he just walked in and he was just looked at as a disrespectful boy. So he said, Imam Malik, rahimahullah, finished his halaqah, and while he was walking out, he said, I was sitting in front of his masjid, and I looked at him and I said, Anta qad zalamtani. You have committed dhulm against me. Imam Malik said, why? What happened? So he said, my father sold his house so I could come here and I could learn a hadith from you, and this is the way I was treated, and your student took me outside and he hit me and Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he said, what do I have to do for you to forgive me? Imam Malik now was really concerned. Even the hayba of a scholar, right? But he's like, no, wait, this kid now is saying I committed dhulm against him. This is different from the sanctity of knowledge. This kid says that he was wrong. So he said, what do I have to do to expiate? What's the kafara? What do I have to do to seek your forgiveness? Imam Malik now is panicking. The kid said, I want to learn a hadith. Hisham ibn Ammar said, I want a hadith for every time I was hit. Imam Malik said, how many times did the other guy hit you? He said 15 times. So Imam Malik rahimahullah gave him 15 ahadith. Then at the end of it, Imam Malik rahimahullah said, Radit, are you pleased? Like, are we done now? Am I forgiven, for what just happened outside? So Hisham ibn Ammar responded to him, Zid min al-darab wa zid fil hadith. Tell that guy to come hit me again and give you some more hadith. So he said, Imam Malik rahimahullah laughed. And he said that was the only time I ever saw him laugh in my life. Right? Imam Malik laughed at that because he was serious. He was like, go call that guy again. If this is what it takes to learn a hadith, go call the guy, let him beat me up a little bit more, and come teach me a hadith again. And he said from that day on, he was entered into the majlis of Imam Malik rahimahullah, and he became a student of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam Malik, by the way, had this dignity, not just, it's not, and I'll show you why it's not arrogance or pride, by the way, when we get to some of the manifestations of his own humility. This is just the izzah that he has for the religion. That the Khalifa of that time, and Imam Malik rahimahullah lived through multiple khulafa. If you look at the chart, I don't have it here actually, sorry. But, oh, there it is. Okay. So if you look at Imam Malik's life now, Imam Malik rahimahullah was born into, the Umayyad period, just like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, and he witnessed the Abbasi rule, and Imam Malik rahimahullah witnessed Harun al-Rashid as well. Okay? Not by much, but he did catch him. So actually this should be a little bit lower. The death of Imam Malik should be lower. So Imam Malik witnessed the death of the life of Harun al-Rashid as well. Harun al-Rashid, as we'll see, was a righteous man. We're going to talk about the political thing towards the end of it, how Imam Malik suffered with the others. But Harun al-Rashid was a righteous man. And Harun al-Rashid, he told Imam Malik rahimahullah, he sent a messenger to Imam Malik rahimahullah, and the request was that Imam Malik come to his house to teach his kids Quran in the house. The idea was that the khulafa did not feel, like their kids should sit in the masjid like everyone else. Okay? So Imam Malik rahimahullah sent the messenger back, and he told the messenger, subhanAllah, he said, قُلْ لِأَمِيرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, tell Amir al-Mu'mineen, your children are no different than the children of the ummah. I'm not going to treat your children differently than I treat the other children. So Harun al-Rashid was like shocked by that, like, whoa. The alim is talking back to the Khalifa with just straightforward. So Harun al-Rashid said, maybe he wants some money. So Harun al-Rashid sent the messenger with bags of gold. Said, yeah, Imam, the Amir al-Mu'mineen is telling you to come teach his kids Quran. Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said, go back to him and take your gold with you. and tell him that your children are no different from the children of the ummah. I'm not going to give up on this. This is it. So the messenger, subhanAllah, he didn't even he just said, go back and take that gold. I don't even want to see it. Imam Malik didn't even touch the bags. Go take it to him and tell him that your children are no different than the children of the ummah. So Harun al-Rashid, the next day was Jum'ah. That was a Thursday. The next day was the day of Friday. Harun al-Rashid, rahimahullah, he ordered that a big chair be placed in the masjid for him during the khutbah. So while everyone was sitting on the ground, he'll be sitting on a chair. And the idea was to remind Imam Malik that I'm in charge. All right? This was a practice, by the way, that came from the Umayya period. After Muawiyah, sometime after Yazid, there was a time where the Khalifa would sit on a chair while everyone else sat on the floor. Then Umar bin Abdul Aziz did away with that chair. Okay? So Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he walks into the masjid and Harun al-Rashid is sitting on that chair. It hasn't been there for 40 years or so. Harun al-Rashid sitting on the chair. So Imam Malik rahimahullah pays no attention to him. He walks right by him. And he stands up on the minbar, and his khutbah was one hadith. Man tawadu alillah rafa'ahu Allah. He said, whoever lowers himself for Allah, Allah will exalt him. That was his khutbah. And he sat down. While he sat down, that was the first khutbah. He just started off with with the beginning of the khutbah. He said that hadith. He sat down. Harun al-Rashid was humiliated. Harun al-Rashid, he started to cry. He got down from the chair and he told his guards, throw it out of the masjid. Imam Malik did not even stand up to complete his khutbah, to do the second khutbah, until the chair was out of the masjid. Like, this is not how we're going to deal with knowledge. And subhanAllah, Imam Malik set a precedence, and this is something we'll see when we talk about his role in politics, that Imam Malik, rahimahullah, all of the khulafa from that day on, if they wanted their children to learn, they had to send them to the masjid. Right? And this was a policy of his that even the children of the khulafa would come and sit in the masjid and they would learn from Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. Also, we find that Harun al-Rashid wanted to change the shape of the Kaaba. Why did he want to change the shape of the Kaaba? Because the Kaaba was, in its original form, a rectangle. This is the way Ibrahim alayhi salam built it. The Prophet ﷺ said that it was built as a rectangle. And the door was on the ground, so a person could enter the Kaaba and walk right through it. Instead, what happened is Quraysh, this is before Islam, they decided to build the Kaaba using only good, pure money. Meaning no money from riba, no money from interest, no money from prostitution, no money from gambling, so on and so forth. And obviously they didn't have much halal money because they didn't have enough money to build the Kaaba the way it was supposed to be built. So instead they built it as the square, the cube shape. And instead they put the ark, the hijr there, and then they moved the door up so that only the royals would be able to enter into the Kaaba. So it was no longer just accessible to everyone else. So the Prophet ﷺ told Aisha radiallahu anha that Quraysh, imagine this conversation. The Prophet ﷺ telling Aisha, by the way, the Kaaba is built wrong. Like, what? The Kaaba is built wrong? The Prophet ﷺ said, yes. So Aisha said, Ya Rasulullah, why don't you fix it? And the Prophet ﷺ said, because they're too close to Jahiliyyah. I don't want them to get it. At the end of the day, it's a technicality. SubhanAllah, the unity of the ummah is more important than fighting over the shape of the Kaaba. So I'm not going to go and offend people now and do this right now. Alhamdulillah, the Kaaba still serves its purpose. SubhanAllah, the first masjid, the holiest place on earth. Like, think about the things we fight about now are masajid. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, I don't want my ummah fighting over the shape of the Kaaba. Leave it as it is. Leave it incorrect. Now, Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu, when he became the Amir of Mecca, in his Khilafah, he rebuilt the Kaaba. He thought, now we're far enough from Jahiliyyah that we can do that. He rebuilt the Kaaba. The problem was, when Abdul Malik ibn Marwan took control of Mecca, he destroyed the Kaaba and built it again as a square. So Harun al-Rashid now, and this is obviously some history as well between the Abbasids and the Umayyas. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan is from Bani Umayyah. So the Abbasiyya want to repudiate them in every way possible. So Harun al-Rashid says to Imam Malik, what do you think if we rebuild the Kaaba now and we put it back to the rectangular shape? Imam Malik rahimahullah said, don't do that. He said, don't turn the house of Allah into a toy that's in the hands of the khulafa. Leave it as it is. Leave it alone. SubhanAllah. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, he had that level of wisdom, that level of hayba, of awe. And the very famous statement, La yufti wa Malik fil Medina. No one should give fatwa when Malik is in Medina. When does that come about? It actually comes about because of an incident that takes place. There was a group of women and they were washing a dead body. They were washing a dead woman. And one of the women that was doing the ghusl, she was doing the ghusl of the dead body, she made a comment and she said, as they were getting close to the thighs and things of that sort, she said, Wallahi, these were private parts that used to commit zina. These were private parts that used to commit adultery. When she did that, you know what happened to her? Her hand became stuck to the thigh of that woman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished her with that her hand became stuck to the thigh of that woman. And it became like a thing in Medina. Everyone was like, what's going on here? And it became the talk of the town. That there's a woman whose hand is stuck to this dead body. And so they all went around seeking an answer. Imam Malik rahimahullah said, when it was presented to him, he said, go to her and lash her the way that you will lash someone for al-qadf, which is, to slander a pure woman. Lash her that way, as if the woman was alive. So, subhanAllah, I want you to imagine, her hand was stuck to this woman's body and she was lashed. While her hand was stuck to this woman's body, as soon as it finished, her hand came free. And everyone said, La yufti wa Malik fil Medina. No one in Medina anymore should give fatwa except for Imam Malik. Meaning no one had the answer to this dilemma of ours except for Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Malik had his way. He knew how to diagnose the situation. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, then was the undisputed alim of Medina. Imam Dar al-Hijrah. There was really no one that even tried to claim that they were on the level of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. And everyone, subhanAllah, continued to praise his manners. And this is beautiful because Imam Malik still distinguished himself not just by the knowledge but by his adab. And you find multiple narrations of that. And Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that, what I learned from Malik in regards to manners and knowledge is like wudu' to tayammum. Okay? The importance of wudu' to the importance of tayammum. Knowing how to do tayammum if you don't have water. He said that's Malik's manners to his knowledge. One of his greatest students as well, who would spread his madhab later on, Abdurrahman ibn al-Qasim, who was his student for 20 years. Listen to what Abdurrahman ibn al-Qasim says. He said, I spent 20 years with Malik. For 1 year, I learned his knowledge. For 19 years, I learned adab from him. 1 year of ilm, 19 years of adab. And he said, and after I left, because he was from Misr, from Egypt, he said, when I got back to Egypt, I said to myself, I wish I would have just spent all 20 years learning his adab. So even the 1 year of knowledge that I spent, I wished I would have dedicated it more to learning from the adab, the demeanor, the manners of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. And to realize that, and almost every one of his students says the same thing. Abdullah ibn Wahab says that we learn more from his manners than his knowledge. To realize, think about how much knowledge Imam Malik has. And for these students to say that his adab was even greater than that, his manners was even greater than his knowledge, is a pretty amazing statement. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala as well, we said that he had the quality of la adri. He would respond with la adri, I don't know. There's a very famous story where a man came from Morocco, from al-Maghrib, to ask Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala 40 questions. In essence, Imam Malik was becoming an icon in North Africa because the students were already learning about him and things of that sort. And so his madhab was spreading in North Africa even while he was still alive. He was becoming their imam. So they prepared this man from Morocco to go ask Imam Malik rahimahullah 40 questions from the people of Morocco. He answered 36 with la adri, with I don't know. 36 out of 40 questions. So the man said, what am I supposed to do when I get back? What am I supposed to tell the people, when I get back? He said, tell them that you came to Imam Malik and you asked him, and Imam Malik said, I don't know. He wasn't worried about his reputation taking a hit. And in essence, the scholars say here that what Imam Malik was trying to do really, he's trying to tell them that the ulama of Morocco will know the situation better than I will. This was part of Imam Malik's policy of not giving fatwa in other places because Imam Malik never left Medina. So I don't know what goes on in Morocco. So Imam Malik gave him the 4 answers that he knew. For 36 of them, Imam Malik rahimahullah said, go tell them that I don't know. There's also a very interesting letter that took place. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, someone wrote him a letter, and this man's name was Abdullah ibn Abdul Aziz al-Umari. Abdullah ibn Abdul Aziz al-Umari. And he wrote a long letter to Imam Malik rahimahullah criticizing his lifestyle. Criticizing Imam Malik rahimahullah for spending so much time in hadith, for spending so much time in knowledge, for the way that he dresses. And basically, he advised him with al-infirad wal-amal. He told him to just focus on being alone and doing good deeds. Meaning, you've done enough in the knowledge field, just now you should seclude yourself and you should become sort of like a monk in that regard. Abdullah ibn Abdul Aziz was that type of person, right? He's just someone that worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, he responded and he says, Inna Allah qassama al-a'mal kama qassama al-arzaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has divided the a'mal, or apportioned our good deeds, the way He's apportioned our sustenance. Meaning the same way you earn your income is the same way you earn your good deeds. Allah Azza wa Jal has already apportioned these things. He says, فَرُبَّ رَجُلٍ فُتِحَ لَهُ فِي الصَّلَاةِ وَلَمْ يُفْتَحْ لَهُ فِي الصَّوْمِ. He said, it might be that one man has the capability to pray more, but not really to fast more. He can pray qiyam al-layl, but he's not really into fasting. أو في الحج وَلَمْ يُفْتَحْ لَهُ فِي الزَّكَاةِ. Or maybe he does hajj, but he's not in a situation where he can give zakah. أو في الجهاد وَلَمْ يُفْتَحْ لَهُ فِي الحج. Or maybe in battle, but hajj has not been open to him. So he's telling him, look, we do different things. He says, you derive nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through your ibadah, through your worship. I derive my nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through al-ilm, through knowledge, and that which the Prophet ﷺ said. Meaning hadithi Rasulullah ﷺ. That's how I derive my nearness to Allah. He said, I'm pleased with what Allah has decreed for me, and I hope that you're pleased with what Allah has decreed for you, and I hope that Allah allows us to reach the same destination. And you do your thing and I'll do my thing. And may Allah make it easy for both of us to reach the same destination. SubhanAllah. And the letter was written in a very rude way apparently. So Imam Malik rahimahullah responded with a lot of adab, with a lot of manners. Like, look, you do your thing and I will do my thing. Now SubhanAllah, I want to mention this last story here. And then I'm going to give you guys a significant break and then we'll go into the politics and the madhab. Alright? I don't know, maybe you guys can just go home now. Alright? No, this is fine. This is perhaps my favorite story of Imam Malik rahimahullah. Because for me, this serves as a qualifier for everything else that's been mentioned. If anyone for a moment thinks that Imam Malik was an arrogant man, this story does away with it. Imam Malik rahimahullah was walking in the street one day and he was on his way to the masjid. And there was a man in front of the masjid who was drunk. Alright? And the man was falling all over the place. And he was screaming out, Ya Allah! Right? He's just screaming out random things. I mean, and subhanAllah, back then, they wouldn't punish you unless you had wine in public, right? So everyone knew the man was drunk, but he was drinking in his house. And he came in front of the masjid and he was making a fool out of himself. So everyone's walking into the masjid and ignoring this man. Now remember the drunk neighbor of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, subhanAllah, they had people that got drunk back then too. But just like the Prophet ﷺ said about Nu'ayman, maybe he loves Allah and His Messenger and Allah and His Messenger love him. Imam Malik rahimahullah, he saw this man tumbling, stumbling, screaming, whatever it is, beat up, miserable. Imam Malik rahimahullah, he went to him and he took his jubbah, which is a very expensive garment, right? He didn't tell his students, go take care of him. He went to the man himself, he kneeled down and he started to clean the man's mouth because apparently he was drooling all over the place. He had, stuff coming out of his mouth. He wiped the man's mouth. He put the man around his shoulder. And he skipped his halaqah that day. Instead, he walked the man to his house. Put him in his house, took care of him, and his students asked him why. He said, I didn't want him to humiliate himself, nor did I want Allah's name to constantly be chanted with the alcohol being mixed in his saliva. The man's just shouting, Allah, Allah. So he's like, it was for the dignity of that man, and it was also for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just, he didn't like to see that. Imam Malik rahimahullah took him to his house, he cleaned him up. One of the narrations says he even cooked for him, took care of him until the man basically regained his senses. And then Imam Malik rahimahullah left him. So there was no halaqah that day. Imam Malik rahimahullah saw a dream that night. And he heard a voice saying to him, Inna taharnak kama taharta akhak. We have purified you the way you have purified your brother. We have purified you the way you have purified your brother. Imam Malik rahimahullah didn't know what to make of the dream. He asked the dream interpreter about it. And it was a very odd dream. Inna taharna kama taharta akhak. And he wasn't really relating it to that person. Then he went to the masjid and he saw that man cleaned up and in the first row of salah and ready to learn hadith that day from Imam Malik rahimahullah. So Imam Malik went to him and Imam Malik rahimahullah was kind of taken aback by seeing him that way. And the man recognized that Imam Malik was shocked at seeing him that way. And he said to him, the one who came to you in your dream came to me in my dream. Khalas, that's it. So Imam Malik rahimahullah was completely blown away by that. And he sat and he became a student of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, and he grew in the circle of Imam Malik rahimahullah. SubhanAllah, this type of thing, that, you know, if this was a man who was arrogant and full of himself, do you think he would have taken the time to go and wipe the spit off of this drunk man's mouth and carry him to his house and things of that sort? No. The pride that he had, the izzah that he had, was in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Nothing about himself. He'd be barefoot and he would do this if it came to, you know, for himself. He didn't care. The young boy could tell him, aren't you afraid of the dhulm that you committed against me? Imam Malik rahimahullah would immediately give in. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala wanted the religion to be honored, and everyone recognized that. All of his students recognized that and they admired that about him rahimahullah ta'ala. So yes, you might have the shaykh like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, which is a very good thing, that's extremely approachable, extremely, you know, laughing, smiling all the time, and that serves its purpose. You know? Then you have a shaykh who's a lot more serious. He's not arrogant, but he's serious. He has a lot more, you know, he has hayba, he has that demeanor, that presence, and that serves its purpose as well. And I can tell you, subhanAllah, that I had teachers like both ways. I had teachers that would watch football and that would, you know, hang out and that were just like buddies, you know, subhanAllah. But when they started speaking about knowledge, you were just absolutely blown away by their knowledge. And I had teachers, wallahi, that I was too afraid to say salamu alaikum to, but I wasn't turned off by them because I didn't think they were arrogant at all. I could tell. You know, arrogance is the guy that walks into the masjid from the back door, doesn't say salam to anyone, you know, is condescending in his words, and then goes home from the back door again. That's arrogance. When a person like walks in and he has that presence and you know who he is, subhanAllah, you know what his ilm is, and he wants the deen to be dignified, that's a very beautiful quality. And Imam Malik rahimahullah is really the standard in that regard. So inshallah ta'ala, we're going to go ahead and take we'll take a 15-minute break, 20-minute break. How long do you guys want? 20-minute break? Okay, we'll take a 20-minute break inshallah. 9:55 inshallah ta'ala, we'll start back up, and we'll get to the politics and the fiqh of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala.